Good evening. Welcome to Progressive Soup. My name is David Stevenson. Tonight we have with us Gary Shaw, and later on we'll be joined by Luther Weeks when he arrives at the studio. But wait. Are you a Satanist?
What's a Satanist? Please define Satan and Satanist.
Oh, no, maybe I've got the words confused. You're not a Satanist, but a...
Secularist.
Oh, okay. Well, my faux pas.
Well, secular has several different meanings. Mm-hmm. Secular means without religion.
Yeah.
But a secular person who's without religion generally is a non-believer in things they cannot see. But a secular government simply means that the government is not taking sides. It's secular in the sense that it's not in favor or against religion. It's just not part of the decision-making process.
That almost sounds like the way the United States was set up.
Yeah, yep. Good point. Yeah.
Well, what happened there?
Well, we have a general understanding that actually in framing the Constitution, that was part of the debate. A lot of people came to the United States from a Europe that was divided, and there were terrible wars, and huge numbers of peoples were killed because of differences of, how they did the cross, or whether they did the cross, or Protestant versus Catholic. And a lot of people came to the U.S. because they wanted freedom for the religion.
Okay, here's a long, drawn-out question for you.
Yeah.
What religions were dominated what countries in Europe, and then what religion dominated the colonies when the British were in charge?
Well, the colonies each set up their own religion. So originally there were established religions by colony. Mm-hmm. So it could be that Maryland was Catholic, and it could be that in Boston in the early days they put Quakers to the gallows, and Roger Williams founded Rhode Island at that time as a place to cut the crap and just live together in peace. So, and we're struggling to do that today, of course.
So then Rhode Island founded.
So when it came time for the U.S. Constitution, they figured, no, we don't want to have any more of that religious strife. There should be, as a matter of fact, Article 6 in the U.S. Constitution says, and it says it very simply, you cannot possibly misunderstand it. It says there shall be no religious test for any office in the United States. So when you had, for example, George Bush II in his debate with Cary for president, and he was asked, what kind of person would you apply for the Supreme Court? And he said, well, I would want to make sure that that person is an avid and faithful God believer. Mm-hmm. He was saying that he would do something opposite to what the U.S. Constitution actually says. And I, for one, was astounded that no one in the news media or the people who ran the debates said, hey, look, are you for the U.S. Constitution, or are you for picking your favorites based on religion? And that's probably part of the reasons why I get so excited about this issue, because there's an underlying prejudice, and the fact that no one called him on it, no one objected. The word, obviously people objected, but no one got to the U.S. public about this, makes me feel that that in some way I'm discriminated against. And I know everybody thinks they're discriminated against, but part of the proof is...
Some of us are correct and some of us aren't.
What?
Some of us are correct in that assumption and some of us are not, apparently.
Yes, but, you gotta be straight. We're all part of a human family, and it's better that we get together and not put these kind of labels or tests on each other.
You mentioned the debate one of the debates between John Cary and George W. Bush in 2004. Now, I'm thinking back to the previous election in 2000, and a debate with Al Gore and George W. Bush. And George W. Bush was asked the question, name your favorite philosopher in history. And, of course, we know there are a lot of great philosophers, Rene Descartes. You could go down the list. George W. Bush answered that question by saying, Jesus Christ. And I thought to myself, well, you know, actually, that seems odd that he would say that Jesus Christ was a philosopher rather than saying he was the Son of God. Because the philosopher is obviously a notch down, a notch lower than the status of the Son of God by a large notch.
Sure.
And yet, I wondered perhaps if maybe he was reaching out to the other two world religions, Islam and Judaism, where they do in fact have a lot of respect for Jesus Christ as a human being and hold a very high place for him in world history, falling short of only one thing. They don't accept him as the Son of God, as the Messiah. So I thought to myself, well, this is George W. Bush reaching out? Is he reaching out to people of other faith in what I thought might be a very positive way? We'll continue with this discussion about secularism.
Well, basically, I think it's important for all of us to be personal about it. As a matter of fact, I enjoy conversations with people who believe differently than I do because I want to find out how they think. Maybe I'll be convinced. Maybe at least I'll get some insight as to what else is going on. But I think it's appropriate to kind of make it personal. So my belief is basically one of compassion and reason. And compassion is the most important. And for example, if a storm comes and blows down or destroys part of my house, or an earthquake even, something like that, I do not believe it is God trying to punish the wicked, or even if it's somebody else's house, who I may think is wicked. But I just don't believe that God is punishing the wicked when that storm comes.
That's the Old
I just
Testament,
believe it's a natural event. So the consequence is, I don't believe that there's going to be something invisible that's going to fix it. I believe it's up to us. So my belief is that it makes it even more important for us to show compassion to others, because ultimately we're responsible for that.
And that's kind of the common denominator between all religions and non-religions, not religious people.
Well,
that common denominator.
Compassion is.
Compassion, yeah, we all share that.
Well,
Or
hopefully.
should.
Well, I mean, there are some, as you know, probably not the majority, I hope, but there are some who believe it's okay if the world goes to hell because that will hasten the coming of the Messiah or the second coming or whatever the heck.
Yeah, there's
I'm not into that.
A lot of born-agains that believe that.
So if somebody is sick, and you can read the early stages of the Bible, which is an early document, and you can go casting out demons. No, I don't believe that illness is caused by demons. It's part of the natural world, which is an amazing thing.
Yeah.
If you're a curious person to find out about. And since it's just part of the natural world, again, it's up to us. If someone's sick, I don't pray for them. What I do is I try to help them by getting them chicken soup or some sort of food, calling the doctor, getting them to the hospital. That, to me, is the way to serve them.
Actions.
So I don't tell people, well, I'm going to pray for you.
Which may or may not, depending upon who they believe is their God, may or may not provide solace for them.
Yeah, but I'd rather people get well than feel not so bad.
Yeah, die feeling.
Yeah. I don't mean to insult people, but one of the greats in Connecticut was Mark Twain.
Yeah.
And he really had some doozies. He skewered everything, but he said faith is believing what you know ain't true.
That is, and absolutely, I'm a devout Christian, but I recognize that people make a judgment based on fact, not on fact, but on faith. They believe everybody believes what they believe.
Okay.
And it has zero to do with any facts. You can't prove the existence of God or disprove.
Yeah.
You can't just prove or disprove.
So again, if I make some statements about my personal belief about what there is and what there isn't, I'm in no way trying to convert other people. I'm in no way trying to put them down. I've got neighbors all over the map with different religions, and they're all great people. And
based on
just
behavior.
Just the other day, I was invited to a neighbor's. They had the now it's not coming out of my lips. The first Holy Communion of their kid. I went. We had a great time. So I have no personal animosities. But I do want the government out of it. In other words, it's one thing to share how we think. It's another thing for a government agency to tell us what we should do, and it's another thing for the government agency to spend money in doling out privileges to people and to groups based on the religion. That upsets me.
That's a battle being fought right now in Congress, in the Senate, talking to a woman by the name of Betsy DeVos.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Tell me about Betsy DeVos. Give me your take on her.
I mean, if you just watch part of the hearings, you'll
find pretty quickly what she's about.
I don't know where to begin, but she apparently is not knowledgeable about education. I mean, here you want a Department of Education that cares about education.
And that understands.
And it's a complicated subject, and somebody who studies and understands. I know there's different philosophies, but having one philosophy for another is different from being ignorant and being concerned. And it's different from trying to funnel monies into Catholic or religious education versus other education. Because everyone can get
private versus public, and the public education, as we all know, is supposed to be based on not on religious doctrine, and not preach religious doctrine. Maybe educate kids about the different religions, but not to take sides with any religion.
So there's actually a number of secular groups in Connecticut. And each one has its own nuance and its own style and its own so on. They're not uniform in any way. But basically, they just believe we live in a natural world and we should care each other. I mean, that's the basic. And a place where you can go is on the web. There's a listing of a number of them with a short description and an email address as to where you can get their particular website. And the overall website is basically Connecticut Coalition of Reason.org. That's CT for Connecticut, COR for Coalition of Reason.org. And I'll leave it to your imagination as to what org stands for. So I'll get that terrible grin off your face there. So,
Okay.
No, but CTCOR.org. And go and pick something that's close to you. The meetings are generally open. You can go and find out whether you love it, you hate it, you want to come back. Nice people, whatever it is. So one thing we want is inclusion. Oh, and so it was only a few years ago that some of us who live in different parts of the state said, "Hey, let's get together as a coalition. Trade information. United, we're stronger." So that's where we came up with the Secular Coalition for Connecticut. And it's essentially the same thing as the Connecticut Coalition of Reason. So
a variety of groups that kind of mix and match and have overlapping. They all do something a little bit different, it sounds like.
Right.
But they all have an overlapping purpose.
Sure. Some have atheist in their title, some have humanist in their title. There's a wonderful congregation for humanistic Judaism. So this is also known by people as being cultural Jews. So a cultural Jew is someone who basically enjoys being part of the Jewish community, who takes the Jewish high holidays as a place to self-reflect and decide to be better. And this can all be done without a particular belief in a deity. And the Congregation for Humanistic Judaism does that wonderfully.
Camera one.
Yeah, I know, but just have a little technical glitch here. Yeah, but with Cary speaking, Should it be camera 1 on, or should it be camera 2 or camera 3? Okay. Well, I see Luther's entered the studio. So continue talking about the pick up where you left off.
Oh,
Where were we?
okay, we're talking about different groups. So I say, for a cultural Jew,
Oh, okay. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Continue.
No, you talked too long.
Yep. We're bringing in our friend Luther Weeks.
Hi, Luther.
While the camera is
How you
not
doing?
focused on where he's, you just don't imagine what he looks like until he actually arrives, is seated, and gets on camera. But in the meanwhile, Cary, talk a little bit more about pick up where you left off before we.
Oh, well, I was saying that there's different
Yep.
groups in Connecticut
Yep.
that we've formed a way of talking with each other, the Coalition of Reason, also called Secular Coalition for Connecticut.
Yep.
Again, it's ctcor.org.
Okay, good. Yeah.
And as I was saying, they're not all exactly the same. There's a Congregation for Humanistic Judaism, which is part of a national and international movement that is a wonderful place for cultural Jews, people who like the values of Judaism, but not necessarily part of the theology. There are groups who call themselves atheists, there are groups who call themselves humanists, both, neither, and so on. There's a Hartford area humanist, there's a Connecticut Valley atheists. In my part of Connecticut, there's also humanists and freethinkers of Fairfield County. So we have book groups, and we have speakers, and we have something called the Sound Off, where each member gets a chance of 10 minutes to talk about the favorite thing that they would like others to know about. And it's a movie group. It's a lot of fun.
And it sounds like every group is open to visitation by
absolutely.
anybody from any background who wants to learn a little bit about that group and share ideas with them.
Absolutely.
And, okay. And welcome, Luther.
Hey, good to see you.
Good to see you both of you.
I'm going to let you guys go to work talking about this issue, and I'm just going to sit back and listen
No, I'm not
and
sure.
learn. Go ahead.
Okay, well, of course, I haven't been here earlier. We were going to talk about 2 bills that we have before the legislature. I don't know if you've talked about any
No,
of
we
that
haven't
yet.
touched them at all.
Okay, well, I represent a simpler bill, I'd say. It's called the Oaths Bill, and OATHS. And, you know, whenever you take a public office or you register to vote or whatever, you take an oath.
And in that oath, you have to pledge your allegiance to a higher authority?
Not necessarily.
No. Okay, go ahead.
So we have 21 different oaths specified in the statutes in Connecticut. And in 14 of those oaths, it starts out with, I solemnly swear, or sincerely affirm, as the case may be, and it ends up with, so help me God, or under penalty of perjury. And we think that's fine. And I call that kind of a universal oath. But in 6 of those oaths, it says, so help me God at the end with nothing else. And at the beginning, it says, I solemnly swear, with no ors or anything on it. So that puts people that don't like to swear or are not religious in a strange situation.
Dang.
Yeah. Now the law says we can raise our hand and we can say we don't take that oath. We want an alternative oath. And that usually takes pretty much the same form as what I said. I solemnly swear or sincerely affirm, blah, blah, blah. But that puts us in a funny situation. You know, I'm an election official, and on election day I get sworn in by my supervisor. And at 5:15 a.m. you got 6 people running around like chickens with their heads off trying to get the polling place working.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say, oh, wait a minute, supervisor, I want the alternate oath. And the supervisor has never heard of it, actually. And even if they have, you know, it would probably take them 15 minutes to figure out what it was. Now, what I do is I tell my supervisor ahead of time, long ahead, days ahead, that this is going to happen. And I carry around with me the oath that's in the law.
Okay, the one that you would prefer to have read to.
Well, the one that's in the law, the universal oath, and one that would just apply to me. And every time I've had that happen, the official has chosen to do the universal oath. So just reads us all the universal oath. And, you know, I would like everyone to know that there's a possibility of a penalty of perjury. On the other hand, if someone fears the capital G God, you know, you know, perjury and purgatory, that's fine with me, that they're warned of both those things at the same time. And, you know, maybe I don't mind raising my hand and saying that, but a lot of people don't want to do that. They don't want to be exposed in the community as somebody different.
Yeah.
And as possibly as one of those people that's an atheist or agnostic or whatever they are. In fact, since 1961, the Supreme Court has ruled that asking for that exception is unconstitutional. It's against the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. There's also another clause for the Constitution that they didn't even rule on it that requires no religious test for public office. So, so all we want to do is change those 6 to be consistent with 14 of the rest of them. If you've done your math, there's one missing. There's one for children being sworn in to testify in court, and that one's a very simple one. It says, do you promise to tell the truth? We're not out to change that one. That one sounds pretty good to us, too.
That's a pretty good one. That wouldn't be a bad one for everybody to do, but certainly that's the most appropriate one for children to do.
Right. The other thing to know is in 2002, there was a bill to change some of those, the ones for witnesses being sworn into court and juries. And that went through the Judiciary Committee, probably proposed by some lawyer, because if you were in court and your life depended on a witness who didn't want to swear to God, you wouldn't want necessarily the jury to know that this person was different in that regard.
And they may not take their testimony as seriously.
Right. And if your life was on the line and that was your witness,
yeah.
And the same thing if you were a prosecutor and that was a witness that saw the person do it.
Yeah. Color the acceptance of anyone's testimony by a member of a jury.
Right. Right. And so in 2002, there was no testimony against this bill. There's really no testimony in favor of the bill. It passed the committee unanimously, and it passed both houses of our legislature unanimously. So we're hoping the legislature will do the same thing and finish the job with these 6 other oaths this year.
Okay. What about when somebody registers to vote? Are they, it's been a long time since I registered to vote.
Yeah.
What happens then? Are you required to take an oath?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
And there's an oath that's in the law, and it's the oath that is not universal, requires you to swear to God. On the other hand, there's the oath that's in the paper registration form. That's different.
So
that only is penalty of perjury.
That's 2 so far. Okay.
Well, yeah, and one of those is legal in the state of Connecticut, and one of them is constitutional in the United States. So if we pass this bill, I guess maybe we'd be assured that every voter was registered correctly.
That seems simple enough, and I'm not sure who would be opposed to that, although I'm sure that there may be somebody that, as we were talking about with Cary early on, there are some people that want to have their way, have their religion be the religion of the United States of America. Getting back to the notion of European religions, of course each European country had their own state religion, and England brought their state religion to the United States when they were in charge of the colonies. And what was that religion, and how did they apply that? And did that have an effect on the colonists and their decision to separate from England?
Well, you know, England didn't bring their religion here. People that were essentially renegades from England brought their religion here.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right. Cary had mentioned that. Rhode Island.
But then again, you know, many of them were very much associated with the churches in England. So it's kind of a strange thing. Yeah, that's an interesting subject. You know, a lot of people think the Indian culture actually is closer to our democracy than some other places. So from the Iroquois, a lot of things in our democracy came from the
So that's Native
Iroquois.
American rather than Asian Indian.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
so, that's hard to say. I think our creator is, that word creator is in the Declaration of Independence, which has very little effect on us today because the Constitution has nothing like that in it. So there's some interesting things there.
So there are things that made it to the Declaration of Independence and the preamble of the Constitution that did not make it into the Constitution.
I don't believe the preamble of the Constitution. It's we the people.
Okay.
There's no
In order to form a more perfect union.
there's no word God or creator in the Constitution. Now, it was in the Declaration of Independence, but that only said creator. And read in the context of the time, that doesn't mean the capital G God in the same sense that most people mean it today. Anyhow, Cary has a different bill to talk about. And I think we ought to go on to that because that's, there's more meat in that.
Okay, we're going to come back and do a second show. We're going to finish off the show and play it out, but I just want to throw one thought into that. Now, I was born in 1953, and apparently, I believe it was, you can correct me on this, I think it was in 1954 that the Declaration, that the Pledge of Allegiance officially adopted and added in the term under God. Wasn't there before then, but there was a point when during the Red Scare, that under God all of a sudden found its way into the Pledge of Allegiance. Wasn't there before, and we've been forced to recite that ever since, although I do not. It's Progressive Soup. I'm David Stevenson. We're going to come back and do a second show. Cary Shaw, Luther Weeks, and we're going to come back and talk about this and some other subjects too. Thank you for joining us. We're going to continue the discussion until the 30 seconds are up. But go ahead, continue, and then we'll pick it up.
Well, Cary, why don't you just say what the other bill is, and then we'll see what's going to be in the second show.
Right. Well, the other bill relates to the patient's right to know. Basically, if you're a member of the public or a possible or actual patient, you'll want to know what medical treatments are appropriate to you that you might not be told about.
And we'll
see you
come back
again in a few minutes.
See you again. We'll see you again tomorrow morning at noon. So tomorrow afternoon.